Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. For those of you who grow your own food, you know that autumn's a really busy time. So much preserving to do to make the most of the abundance from the garden. Today we're going to have a look at what I've been doing to preserve all the food and ensure that my pantry and freezers keep me going throughout the year. At this time of year, I like to make the most of things growing abundantly in the garden or those things that are going to be finishing off soon. Here I've got my green onions that I left to go to seed, but a lot of them haven't, and they're looking fresh and vibrant, and I've been harvesting these to make my onion salt. I've also been using it in my stock paste that I like to make also at this time of year. The onion salt is a really great flavouring that I like to use sort of as part of a rub mix on meats. And I also use it on my zucchini chips, anything where you need a little bit of an onion flavour. The stock paste is something that I make the most of anything growing in the garden. So in this stock paste I've used carrots and celery and the green onions. I've used zucchini. Herbs that are growing such as the basil and the rosemary. Really you could throw anything in. This stays in the fridge, and because it's got so much salt in it, it really does last a long time. And I use it in soups and stews and it adds a really great flavour. Here's my cucumber plants. Now they're mostly finished, but there's still a few fruit coming along. I have been busy right throughout the month processing cucumbers to preserve it for later in the year. One of my favourite cucumber products is to make a cucumber relish. It is a bit of a treat as I've added sweetness using honey that I have lots of. But I do use it sparingly as a salad dressing or just on the side with meats, and it makes a really lovely gift for people as well. I've also been experimenting with fermenting cucumbers. I've done some plain. Some of them I think I over fermented and they are a bit squishy, but others still have a fair bit of crunch. This carrot and cucumber and ginger mix is a new one. I've just grated up the carrots and cucumbers and added shredded ginger and fermented for a couple of days. So it'll be interesting to see how that one lasts. I've also pickled lots of cucumbers and I find that they do last right throughout the year. So I've done a big batch of those, and it's a really easy way to add cucumbers to a salad or just as a side throughout the year also. My 4 zucchini plants have been really abundant, and it's been great to be able to share lots of these around, use lots in the kitchen fresh, but also I do like to preserve it for later in the year. I do grate the zucchini and keep it in little silicone cubes, and I'll use that later on through the year for zucchini slices. I have been dehydrating some grated zucchini as well, again, so you can just throw it into soups or stews or whatever you want. I've also been making great zucchini chips. When these zucchinis get really large and you've missed them, I'm finding the zucchini chips really make a great little snack, and you flavour it up with some paprika, some of my onion salt. It really makes a lovely treat. And now to the tomatoes. I have had quite a good season, although lots of people in my area have reported very green tomatoes. I did a harvest yesterday and collected another big full basket load. This year I'm mostly concentrating on making my dehydrated tomatoes and my tomato salsa, because last year I had an abundance and I made sauces and pastes and soups and chutneys. So I've got plenty of all of that. So I've really been concentrating on the things that I'm likely to use. With the dehydrated tomatoes, I do like to keep them in the freezer. They're not fully dehydrated, so just to make sure that they stay good all year, I'll pop them in the freezer. These ones here I've dehydrated with onion salt and with some basil, which really adds a great flavour. Now with the tomato salsa, I do make a lot, so much that it keeps me going right throughout the year. It's fermented, so it does last really well in the refrigerator, and I enjoy that every morning with my eggs for breakfast. My eggplants here are just starting to produce. I've harvested a couple of really lovely fruit already and have started to make some ratatouille, which is my favourite way to preserve eggplant. I usually cook up batches and then put them in those little silicone squares in the freezer and store them as the little cubes, which are really easy to grab out during the year to add as a side dish to various meals. And I also like to make Mediterranean chutney, which is eggplant, zucchini and other summer veg. Another thing I like to make is garlic paste. Now, it's a fermented garlic paste, so I prepared this yesterday. You just roast the garlic on very low, like a 70 degrees Celsius, and pop them all out of their skins. Then whiz them up with some lemon and salt, and then you just leave it to sit for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and that improves the flavour. And then you pop that in the fridge and it can last up to a year. And it's a really convenient way to use garlic. Half a teaspoon of this paste is 1 clove. At this time of year, I also get out to forage for apples in the local area, as my trees aren't that productive as yet. I'm focused at the moment on making apple cider vinegar. I've got 2 batches of the apple cider vinegar going at the moment. I usually use apple scraps, but as I'm not dehydrating any apples this year, I'm just going to chop up the whole apples and hopefully that works just the same. I've added in some honey instead of sugar, as I have lots of that, so these will just take a little bit longer to ferment. I've also made a batch of Worcestershire sauce. I think the more condiments you can make yourself, the better. It means you know exactly what's in the products and it doesn't have all the nasties that are often added to commercial products. Here I've got 2 varieties of mustard. I've made a honey mustard with the honey that I have, and I've also made just a plain Dijon mustard. This is the first time I've tried making mustards, and it will take a little while for the flavours to develop and the bitterness to settle down, so I haven't tried those yet. At this time of year, I also harvest honey from my hives. It takes me a couple of days to do this and then longer to clean up all the wax and do some additional processing. To clean the wax, I do soak it a couple of times and then strain it. And it's the first soaking water that is full of honey, so I don't want to waste it. I'm making mead at the moment to ensure I don't waste the wax capping rinsing water. Here I have 3 lots of mead on the go. It does take many months to turn to mead, so it's a set and forget type thing. I'll be making the most of the wax by making beeswax candles, but I'll do that when things quieten down a bit. In order to ensure plenty of freezer space, sometimes I have to do a bit of a clearance. So just recently I've cleared out all the bones and the fat that I had in there and processed it into bone broth and tallow. I render the fat down and store it in jars, which I use for my cooking, and that stores quite well here in the pantry. And I've also processed lots of the bones into a stock, so that's ready to use. I do pressure can that so it's shelf stable, and it's really great having that in the pantry going into winter for all the winter soups. It just reminds me of another thing that I do at this time of year is pod all the dry beans. These ones are borlotti beans, which I've already got processed. But just here are my frost beans, which I'm still to get out of their pods. I've also finished harvesting all my hazelnuts. So this was the first year that I actually got a couple of tubs worth like this. So I'll get those all out of their shells and roast them up so that they're ready to use. Now, not exactly food preserving. Here are some radish seed pods, which I've been busy getting the seeds from. I think it's really important to learn how to save your own seeds so that you can become self-reliant with your food supply. Growing your own food and preserving it does take some time, but I think it's time well spent. Not only does it promote good health for ourselves, but it also promotes health for the local environment. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.